be off recording. We're going to do, this is Shulchan Aruch, this is Yora Deah, this is Simin Yud Ches, and we're going to pick up by Sif Hey that we did until last time Sif Dalid, and I'm going to pick up by Sif Hey. So a sakin sheish begimois harpe, a knife that has many nicks in it. Afilu kula muskenos, even if every single one of them is like serrated. In other words, like mususachos, meaning we have one that you'll only feel it on one side, you don't feel it on the other side. Afilu shachat ba b'diavad psula. Even if you shechted with it, even b'diavad it's puzzle. So there's no din, no heter that if it has a lot of those nicks that it's going to be puzzle. Even if they're musachas, and I guess presumably even if they're all facing the same way. But the bottom line is, if you have too many, then it's not good. So since there are so many nicks in it, so many pigimois, we're concerning that he did a slight reversal and he didn't even realize it. So again, even if they're all facing one way and he's going to do it the other way, so he feels it when he goes down the knife, when he's yavai, but he does it hailach, but he does it when he moves the knife the other way. So therefore, it's not going to touch begimus. Still, we assume that if there's so many of them, he's going to have a little bit of a jitter where he might actually pull in a little bit. It's not going to be one fluid motion, and it's not going to be good. Simin Vav. Sakin Chada a sharp knife that has been sharpened. Varei Eina Chalaka, but it's not smooth. Ella Magabas Roisha Hashibaylis. Rather, it feels like the head of an ear of grain. I think we had this in class, where when you go on the ear of grain, it looks very smooth, but when you go down the ear of grain, you feel resistance, automatically feel resistance. So it's all sharp and everything and all smooth, all sharpened, but there is resistance. Shehu mistabeach be'etzba, in which it catches his finger. So hayil ve'ein ba pagam, since there's actually no pagam there's no actual nicks. It's just for some reason it's completely smooth, but I guess there's a lot of friction. Sheichten ba ikslaughter with it. This is Lashon Rambam, which is interesting because I guess it's something is catching. So why don't you assume that it catches the skin also? I don't know. Let's maybe Tshuva has. I don't know if we discussed the reason why, and I don't think he said anything in class. But it's interesting that if it is catching, it does feel rough. Why don't we assume? I guess there's no actual behemoth, but again, it's rough. There's friction there, and we want to cut without friction. I think that's the whole point, is to cut without friction. I mean, that's what I assumed the point of the behemoth is that there shouldn't be any pulling or tearing of the meat. It should go very smooth. Anyway, so I got. So what is there I must say? So 1 second, let me just do this. Hold on a second. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so where are we? So Haga. All right.
Wait, but sorry. What is a mistabach exactly?
I'm sorry, what is mishtabach?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, where do we see that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you. You're fine. I just
okay,
don't know
no, just the end of this. Shu mistabach be'etzbo, volvein ba'pagam shochtin ba. Just wait. I'm just what's exactly? It's smooth. It's smooth, but it's like Roshi Bolis. It's
right. So it catches his finger. So his finger feels friction.
But how is that different than the Chutasara and the Beis?
So again, because there's no, so exactly. So I asked that question. Even though it in other words, there's friction, but there's no there's no nicks, there's no actual begimus. So the edge of the blade, as far as we could tell, is all smooth. It's all sharpened. It's all fine. There's no nicks in it. but for some reason it there's friction when you go down there, and I don't know why. And for some reason that is considered fine, that you could check with it, but I don't know why, because the point is to be smooth, and if it has a little bit of friction, even if it's not, there's no hook, right? There's a pagam is sort of like a hook, and it'll catch a skin, and it's not going to cut the skin, but it's going to tear it off, right? That's what we're afraid. Here, you're cutting, but it's not going to catch anything, but it's not smooth either. There's friction. So I guess the initial cut wouldn't that also pull skin, especially like on a bird or something else that has very fine skin? Wouldn't that also pull the skin away before it cuts it? I don't know. I don't understand this so well. Um, I don't know. I guess you gotta look into different farshim to explain. Maybe we'll see if Piskei Tshuva or the Ber Haitiv explain it better. But I don't know right now. So the Rama says ve'ein ve'enu noya again l'shatabai, but we are. So the Rama says we don't have a practice to shecht with this. So he's more machmer. The feature anu b'kiyin v'davar, not b'kiyin v'davar. In other words, he's again, he doesn't explain why it's allowed, but since we don't know the difference between something that's like a shabaylas and something that's an actual begima, so therefore um, we don't do it with 1 second. This involve. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Okay, sakin shapiyah achalak ve'enoi chada, a knife whose edge is smooth but it's not sharp. Hayil ve'ein ba pagam, since there's no pagam. Sheikhtin ba, you could still shecht with it because even though it's not very sharp, it still doesn't have any pegimus. V'yafal gav shahaylich v'hevi kolayim, and even though you got to move back and forth all day long, acha shachta, until you actually do a shechita. So shechita is like share, the shechita is kosher. And like we discussed in class, we're not worried about shehiyah, we're not worried about a person that's delaying. As long as he's constantly doing the motion of back and forth, I guess it's not going to be kol yom. I guess it means one fluid motion is not going to do it. You got to do several motions to do it because it's not very sharp. But the bottom line is it doesn't catch, and therefore it's allowed. Sakin shehi, I love Yora Deah k'nachash, one that goes up and down like a snake. It's one of those curved blades like you see in ninja movies. The ain ba pagam, but there's no pagam. It's completely smooth as you run your nail up and down, but it goes like in a snake-like fashion. Sheichten ba l'chatchila. You could even shecht with it l'chatchila. But I think later Achronim said it's usher. I think because when you shecht with it, the knife's going to leave it. Leave the physical touch as it goes to the concave part of the knife, and it's going to pick it up again when it goes convex, and that little space is sort of like a shahiyah, because it's automatically shahiyah because you're cutting, lifting even though you're not lifting the knife, practically the knife is being lifted off the skin, and then again the knife is coming back on the skin, in the space of the concave. So that's why some achronim say that it's that we should not use it, even if it's only two. As long as any concave part, it cannot be used. But the Shulchan Aruch paskins that you could, and the Ramah does not correct it. So presumably the Ramah also agrees that you could shech with such a knife. Bedikas Sasakin, when you examine the knife, tzricha. I'm sure. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Abashara itufra v'atla ruchasa. So then it requires that you have absara, which means you do it with your flesh. V'aturfa, and you do it with your fingernail. V'atlasa, and it goes three directions, plus a ruchasa, and it's three directions. So you go up and down the knife, both with your flesh and your fingernail, and you do three directions: down the middle, down the side, down the side. I guess we're going to see. The Hainu Shemelchan Mevi ad basar etz basai. That is, he moves it back and forth on the flusher's finger. V'achar kach melicha mevi al tzifarnai, and afterwards he does it on his fingernail. Mishleshes ruchasai, on three sides, meaning the front side and then a little bit on each side. Shehem pia shnei tzedeh, namely the edge and its two sides. Kedei shelo yiheh bam pagam klal, so that we don't feel any nicks at all whatsoever. V'idvaik la'et v'chanus halev, and we check it very slowly and we focus our attention. Shala yifne libai lidvar macherim, so that a person is not thinking about other matters while he's checking his knife, because the person spaces out while he checks his knife, he's not going to realize that if he feels anything. And he must change a fingernail after part of the examination. Interesting. Shema unless the fingernail itself is damaged by the blade. So I guess if the fingernail gets cut in the middle, then you're not going to feel anything anymore, because now it's split and it's going on the sides, but it's not really feeling anything on the middle of the knife, it's feeling any gums. Perhaps there is a nick on the sides, and he would not sense it. I thought the other way around. I thought there was a pagam in the middle, and if his fingernail is split, he's not going to feel it. But I guess there's a nick on the side, and it cuts his nail away maybe, so then he's not going to feel it. Okay? Because it passes within the fingernail's own notch. Like I said, so therefore, if you constantly do the same fingernail and you get a groove in it, you're not going to feel anything. So therefore, you do it with the skin, but also when your fingernail, you got to change the fingernail every so often. Then you should not check both sides of a knife together. Each one should do by yourself. I don't know how you check both together. Maybe two nails, possibly, maybe he's talking about, or two fingers to go up and down. That's possible. If you do the flesh part, maybe two fingers up and down the sides. So the Ramah says you should not do that. Sakin sheyeshla pagima aser l'shchaypa. A knife that has a pagima is aser for shchita. Yeah, okay, we know that. Afilu im mechavin l'shchayt shalai keneged the pagima. Even if he intends to slaughter away from the pagima. So let's say it has pagima near the bottom of the knife and near the top of the knife, and he's like, you know what? It's a very long knife. I have one of these machetes, Crocodile Dundee. I have like a maybe a 3-foot knife or whatever. I'm using basically a little sword. And there's plenty of knife space to go without it getting the other nick. Still not good. But on Yom Tov, the custom is permitted if there's no other knife. Lichreich matlis al pagima. You wrap a cloth or you wrap something around the pagima to show where the pagima is in the knife, to have a simon on the part of the knife that is pagima, so you know that can't go near the animal. Kivan she'ein yachol lahashchiza, since it cannot be sharpened or fixed on Yom Tif, v'imhu shasitchak, and it's shasitchak, it's pressing need. So she'ein lo yachana lashchiza, and there's no means to sharpen it. Afilu b'chayil mutu l'shchait. So really, even on a weekday, it should be permitted to shacht it. Al yidei krichas matlis al pagima, by wrapping a cloth over the gam. So first he said he can't do it, but if you wrap something, you make a simon around the gam, then you could do it shasal. I don't know. I guess he's talking. I think the weekday would be even shasal chak. You could do it, but why would be shasal chak during the weekday? I guess maybe you'd have no stone. You're out in the field, you have no stone, and you've been camping, and you're starving, and you catch a little animal, a little chicken. In the forest, and this is what you have to eat, and you have nothing to sharpen your knife on. Maybe shasal chak. Yes, in that situation, you'd be able to do that as well. Va'ayin la'el simin vav sif aleph, and the Ramah says there's going to be more. He said before simin vav sif aleph, but again we did that tonight. And what did he say? Simin vav sif aleph. I guess he says that this is with the Shabbalis, but I don't know. I don't know why he's referring to that. Maybe he's saying that we're not knowing to do like this. Have a begam, you can't do it. Sakin sheyesh la shnei piyais, a knife that has two edges. Tzarech lidvaik shnei tzadin. So it requires that both sides are checked. A double-edged knife, I guess that would mean on both sides of the knife. So there's no flat side of the knife, right? One side usually is not sharp, and you can put it on your hand, and the other part has the blade. This one, I guess the blade is on both sides, like the old-fashioned swords. You have to check both sides to do it, presumably because you don't want to check one side and then forget which side you did, and then check the other side. Sifir Aleph. Hashoichet habehemus haboy soy oifos harbe. One who checks many animals and many birds. Sarech lidvaik bein kol echad yechad. You check between every single animal. You can't just like check and check all day and then that's good. She'im lo yasakain. If he did not do so, a balavar choin, and he checked at the end. V'nimsa saki pagum, and he finds that it's pagam in there. Harei kol safek nevelis. Now everything that he checked the entire day is safek nevelis. Afilu shayna, even the first one. Because we have, like I think we learned at the beginning, I think of Sif Yud Ches, that if you checked and you don't check, and then you find a begam at the end, so then what's going to happen is that you don't assume that you checked it properly, and then you hit the bone. That's what caused a nick. You assume that even from the beginning it might have been a problem, and you even the original skin was not shechted properly. Umi writes, and there's the Ramah says Umi writes lachnes atzmai suffix zeh, and one who wishes to place himself one who wants to place himself into such a suffix, ein tzarach litzvay sakin bein shchita shchita, does not need to examine the knife between each slaughter. Okay, Tzarachin, what he's talking, Trumas Adeshin is referring to this. Why? I guess we have to see in the Mfarshim why a person would want to be in such a suffix. Afapi shabada kasaken kodim shchita. Even though he checks the knife before shechting, tzarach lachzor lezvakay achar hashchita. He must re-examine the knife after shchita. V'hanei mili sakin l'fenenu, and it applies with the knife when the knife is before us. Aval im nevad shchita kshera. But if you lost a knife, the shchita is kosher, even though you never shechted, because you checked in the beginning, it was fine. Then you shechted, you lost the knife, you never checked to check the knife after, so it's still good because we'd assume nothing happened. Afilu shachat bahar beizeh achar zeh. Even if he checked it many after that, but then the knife got lost, so it's still good. So when you have the knife and you find a pagam, then everything is safek nevela. But when you check beforehand and you shach and you lose a knife, so that's fine. So maybe a person could do that. Lose a knife after a whole entire day's of shachting, just lose a knife. I don't know. V'im naga mafrekes shel achas mehen, and if it struck the mafrekes, the neck bone of one of them, the spine, yesh la'achmir, he should be machmir v'lochosh l'chol oisan shnichtu achar kach. And if you're concerned regarding every shechita after that, you should definitely check the knife. Even if you lost the knife, and you can't check the knife anymore, but if he'd had hit the spine during a shechita, day of shechita, then all those after that one, I guess, are going to be safek nevela. Shachat b'sakin baduk. If a person shechted with a knife that was checked, and I got lost before he could examine it. And afterwards he found that it knew there was begam. The shchita still kosher. Since he performed it permissibly, and the begam was then found, so say that he broke that he broke bones with it. And he was and he did not know about it. Daiki sakin as kesses. Zekes sa. Say there's a chazaka. Thus the knife retains its chazaka. So if a guy shechted and then he lost a knife and then he found the knife again, you could assume that someone picked it up, possibly, and played around with it. And that's the knife itself has a cheskes kashrus, and the fact that it isn't a begam now, it must be that it developed a begam after he finished his shchitas, and because someone toyed with it, or maybe he did with it. I'm realizing Okay, Yudal. Imloi badak hasakin v'shachat ba. If he did not examine the knife and he shecht with it, v'nevad achar shchita, and he lost it after shchita, shchita's apostle, shchita's apostle. V'medvar mum, what are we talking about? V'stam hasakin, with a regular ordinary knife. Aval, tavach sheyesh lo hasakin yuchedes l'shchita, but a knife that is yuchedes for shchita, it's designated for shchita. It's like a special shchita knife like we have. A makam yichad shmitzay sham tamid, and it's always placed in a place, and he stores in a place special. Bechezkas baduk by, and it's presumed to be examined. V'im shachat ba beloi bedika v'nevad, and if he shechted with it without checking and it was lost, shchita kshera, then the shchita is kosher, because we assume that he checked it after shchita soiv last time, and now he forgot to check it again, but it's always put in a special place. No one touches it. His kids don't run around with it, chopping blocks outside. So therefore, it's designated shechita knife. We can assume that it did not get a pagam on its own. Roy l'chol tavak she'iloi sakim mecheres l'shita. So it's fitting for every shoichet. Tavak really means a butcher, but I guess here it's using it as a butcher was the one who used to shecht. So every shoichet should have a knife designated for shchita. V'osher lasos by shum davar, and it's forbidden to use it for anything else. V'yatznienu shala yivgimenu, and he must store it in a place where it should not be to get any pagams. It shouldn't be damaged. It shouldn't get any nicks in it. Nevertheless, one should still be machmer and should not check with it without always checking beforehand and checking afterwards. Get into practice of checking beforehand and checking afterwards, even if you have a designated knife, and even if last time you checked it and it was good, and you put it away in its case and you put it away on a shelf, and then you picked it up and you try to check with it, always check beforehand. Good practice. Simin Tezvav. Ashoichet Besakin Baduk. One who shechs with a knife that was already checked. Shibar by Emtzai. And after he shechted, he broke bones with it. So he decided, back then, I guess they only had one knife. So he did his shchita, and then he started chopping up the animal. Derech shibira shaloi derech halacha vava, by breaking and not by the slicing motion. In other words, by chopping but not by sawing through it. And he found that there was a pagam in it after he checked it. The shchitas lakasher, the anu Thailand should be rusted about because we attribute that it happened when he was chopping up the bones. And likewise, in a similar case, the going should not fall al gabe karka kasha. Let's say he dropped it after he shechted it. All of a sudden, it slipped out of his hand and he dropped it on the floor. V'davka sherainu shenafla al chudai. Dafka, when he saw it fall and it looked like it landed on its edge. If it landed on it, bounced on its handle, and then it sort of landed flat, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about where it looked like it landed on its edge, or bounce on its edge on the way down or something. Aval, besafek, ain toilin. But if it's not certain, then we assume loimar shenafal al chudai. Then we assume that it's fell on its edge. So even if he fell and didn't see what happened, we assume that it landed on its edge. V'im shibar by etzem hamafrakas. And if the neck bone, if he broke the neck bone with it, afilu derech shvira, even by breaking it. Ein toilin by, we do not attribute a pagam to that. B'fnei shehu rach, because the neck bone is soft. Interesting. I guess the neck bone is soft enough that it won't make a pagam of the knife. Normally, it could, but that's not where we assume the pagam would come from. The Rama says, "Vein kiluk b'chol zeh bein shebadak hasaki and tchila v'samach l'shkata oy shoyeh b'chezras badak tchilos v'lay badak samach l'shkita." And there's no distinction between whether the knife was examined close to shchita, or already presumed to have it checked, but he did not actually check it, and he did not check the shchita. In other words, you woke up in the morning, you checked it, you put it down, then you went to go daven, then you picked up the knife and went to go shecht. The filu mikrei sakin baduk. For even in such a case, it's considered a checked knife. So long as you checked it before shchita that time, or close proximity to that time, and you made sure it didn't fall or didn't do anything else, so then it's still good. Let's admit this person in. Okay. We are now Sif Yud Zayin. Sif Tez Zayin. Im boda kasakin achar shchita soy. If you check the knife after you did shchita, ve'etzniyai va'achar kach nimtza pagum, and afterwards you checked it and it was found that it had a pagam. Last ba, we do not rely on it. The itmar bedavar achar nifgam, for it could be that something else damaged it, ayushiber by, or it broke it, by be'atzmoi, so or it broke on the bones. The lav, I say, and he did not realize it. So if he examined like after shchita and stored it, and afterwards, so in other words, he examined the knife, did not find a nick, he put it away. Then later on, he picked it up. He wanted to show his mashkiach the knife, and the mashkiach comes and checks it again and finds that it has a pagam. So we don't assume the pagam came from the shchita. We still assume the pagam came afterwards somehow. Maybe without him realizing it, he chopped bones, or someone else took his knife without. Yeah, I'm sorry. Is a question? Question? No question? Okay. So, and we assume that that it got damaged elsewhere. Sif Yud Zayin. Tavach, a butcher or a shoichet, shaloi haras sakin al chacham, that did not show the knife to chacham, v'nimtzu yafa, and it was found to be suitable. So according to the Torah, hayu menidun oisai, so he would be not. He would still be disqualified. He would be benadin. He would be disqualified because you still have to show it to chacham, even though it was found good. But in situations where you have a chacham around, so you have to show it to chacham. And if it was found nicked, he's disqualified, and the meat is disqualified. So in other words, the Ramah is saying you're only disqualified if it actually was found from gam. If it was found good, then it's fine. But only if you found with gam, then that's when it's not good. For it was found because he found it suitable, and but then the chacham may forgive it, and he not be disqualified. So the Shulchan Aruch saying he's disqualified, but the Ramah is saying that if it was found good, the chacham then could say, you know what, it was good anyway. You didn't show it to me, but it was good. Then it's fine. Okay. Vidna, and we should know that noihagu, that we are noyig, we have a minig now, that lamina is a nashem yiduim ashkasay v'hadbekis, that there are reputable people who know how to check the knife and know about shchita. V'lahem machlu chacham kvoidam, and the chacham give them honor. I guess maybe I don't maybe it's Kabbalah. Kiheims reason v'zaharim, because they are quick and they are careful. V'rabbat tzarech yashiv adas, and requires much concentration. V'yer shemayim and yer shemayim, pure heaven. L'dvigas hasakin, to checking the knife. Haloi tira, and you don't see kidvaik adam pa'amim shtei shalosh v'lo yirgesh b'gimas daka. When a person checks it 2 or 3 times, it does not feel a small nick. V'akakach yimsu ki hachin levavai bachroina. And afterwards it was found, because he focused attention on the last minute, v'chishosh k'moisai b'fi kaines halev. Now by touching, according to the tension, by actually concentrating, that he found it. So you find that sometimes you can check it 2 or 3 times and not find a nick, but then when you actually concentrate, you'll find it. So it's very important that you have to point reputable people who are known to be your shemayim and to know the halachas, that when they check it and they have das, they have concentration, and when they check it, they know that they're checking it well. They're not going to just do a quick job. They know what they're looking for, feeling for, and they're going to check the knife properly. I guess that's why I think Rabbi Lenker was saying how when you do shchita, then in comes mashkiach, and he wants to see everyone's knife. That's the point that I guess the mashkiach is to check everyone's knife. Hatavach tzarech shital sachar min hatrefas k'may min haksheris, and the butcher can take payment from treif meat as kosher meat. So if a person checks and it ends up being a treifa, so you can still sell that to a guy. You're allowed to have enough from a treifa. You cannot have enough from basal chalav, but you're allowed to have enough from treifas, which means animals are not shachled properly, and also for tummy animals that are not kosher. Yeah, I actually heard this interesting thing that the huge movement to help Jews become secular or made Jews secular in America before the war when they moved here. A lot of Jews came from Russia in the 1850s and the early 1900s. So sorry, 1890s and early 1900s. And they ended up coming to New York or to other parts of America, and they came from families and they were from. But when the Depression hit in the late 20s and early 30s, so a lot of them did not have a lot of good jobs, and they either couldn't afford kosher meat or they were butchers and they couldn't sell only kosher meat. They started selling treifas, and people started turning a blind eye for it because of the depression, and people were poor and they had no other thing to do. So technically, you could sell that type of meat, but I guess it lent them to a tolerance for such things, and unfortunately, that might have led to them going off a derech. That and probably being fired every single Shabbos and having to find a new job every single Sunday, that might have also attributed to it. But some people still stayed from, and yeah, the mysterious numbers that they had. You can't judge people. I'm just trying to give history. I'm not trying to judge anybody. Just saying. Okay, so you can take payment from a treif, and you can take payment from like a kosher. Shalai yavai lahakla lahakshir, because we did not, um, we're not hakil regarding kashrus. Today, lekabel scharai min kashrus, in order for him to receive payment for the kosher meat. So since he could get payment from a treifa, therefore, that helps that we're not going to be makel. If you can't take payment from a treifa, you're going to find every way to make it a kosher because you don't want to. Otherwise, the animal is going to be worthless. If you could sell the treifa, so you're not going to lower your standards because you could just sell the treif. And so is the minig in some places. That a person should not both shecht and be boidik by himself, el oisan and munam minakal, but rather those point to the community. So I think there are most important. So in Aleph that we have the minig that we appoint sheichtim. We don't just have everyone shecht their own meat. We appoint specific sheichtim to do our shechita for us through the process of Kabbalah. Ruvain Shamar L'Shimon. If Ruvain said to Shimon, Baduk Sakin, this is your test. Ruvain, these Baduk Sakin Zeh Ubadku Shnayim, that checked the knife and they checked it twice. So, Mahayev, have a that the Shtarech Finisna L'Ruvain. So who a nigdei that Shtarech Finisna L'Ruvain. So, let's say it was given to Ruvain. Ruvain haya haylich l'shoichet v'lachu Levi miyadai v'nimsa pagam. And then Ruvain was going to shecht it, but then he gave it to Levi, and Levi checked it, and he had a pagam. So Ruvain and Shimon checked it, fine, but Levi checked it, and had a pagam. So then we have Ruvain, Matzah Loisai, Sha'adayin, Haya, Reitze, Lizvais, Hagen, and Ruvain apologized, saying he still wanted to check it properly. Hakol, this is all the Rashba. So Masav Maichichim Alav, his actions prove that Shahaya died, that it was enough, like to him, Ba'asai B'dika, that he checked it. Lefikach, Ba'avrin Isai, and therefore the meat is now allowed. V'im nirim hadvarim shahaya ke'ein shegaga, and if it appeared that it was like a mistake, that he did it by an inadvertent mistake, shu adam kasher machzirin Isai, and he's still a reliable person, he still returned to be a sheichet. So in that situation, we could still say that his checking wasn't bad. He made a mistake, and he still could be a sheichet. Died sheyikach alav shaloi yashav oid l'davar kazui, provided he accepts not to do this again. So if Ruvain said to Shimon, check the knife, and they checked it, and it was then given to Ruvain, and then Ruvain was going to Shech, but then he gave it to Levi, and Levi said that he found a Begam. And then Ruvain said that, oh, 1 second, what I really want to do was check it still. Or Ruvain says, sorry that I didn't check it. I should have checked it myself also. So then I guess Ruvain is still considered, and it doesn't really talk about Levi here. I think, sorry, Shimon. Shimon is the one who checked it, but for some reason Ruvain is the one I think that we're talking about. So as long as he said it was a mistake and he won't do it again, then it's fine. And he's not removed as a shaychet, and the knife is okay. Tavach shnimsa pekima b'rosh sakin. If a butcher finds a nick on the top of the knife, amr zay pekima fnei shani machse dam ha'ifais b'rosh sakin. He says the nick is because I covered the bird's blood on its tip. In other words, the begam is not a nick, but it really is something that's stuck to it. Because shani shaychet ani nizhar shani noyeg b'bekima, and when I shecht, I'm very careful not to touch that nick. So my very nice side, then it's okay. The karav leimar hakelim asurim, and is close to saying that but it's very close to saying that his kalim are asur. He's in a hot spot. Sort of practice is not one that we want. We got to watch him very carefully, and he could really be in a situation where he's going to lose his certification to be a shaychet. Okay. So let's see. What time is it now? It's 9:13. Let's do some Piskei Tshuva. So we did some last time, and let's see where we're up to. 1 second. Okay, Hatzipyrin. You checked this for the fingernail. So b'sefer michzav Eliyahu, michzav Eliyahu, kasav shelo yitzvah kasakin b'sha shahayad kara. So it says that one should not check the knife when his hand is cold, or it's numb, oicham, or it's very hot. Cham oid is very hot. Oy shahayad toifech, or his hand is like pulsating, it's like tingling. Hein mim chames mashka oy zia. And rather when it's due to moisture, zia, or sweat, afilu toivach shaloi al ma'amed lahatfiach. Even if it's like pulsating, provided he's not intended to deliberately pulsate, to twitch. Ki badok o menusas Shebichol elu lo yargish, for he checked and he tested the knife in all these conditions. And he did not perceive any, he didn't feel anything. Af yiknach hasakin shelo yeboy shom luhuos, and one should wipe the knife so that there's no moisture on it anymore. Gam b'shas sheruach hanashivas ba'olam. And even if the wind is blowing outside, one should not stand outdoors and examine it. Because wind makes it difficult to check. So a person should check it when he has good feeling, not when he's sweating, not when he's numb, but I guess room temperature when he's feeling okay, and not when his hands are twitching, and not in the wind. The shchita, this for slaughtering. Shapasol kisha hal avosh v'dachu divrei taz. So one who ruled according to like the vosh and reject and said not like the words of taz. Shahu rach, that it's soft. This is the neck bone is considered soft. Shichta the im yadon shenoga hasakin marfrekes sheyesh chasach marfrekes, and he wrote that if we know the knife touched the marfrekes, the neck bone, and he cut the neck bone, and the nick is not larger than the size of a fingernail. I don't think that means the width of the fingernail. It means like the fingernail to go in. When a person has normal cut nails, it shouldn't, then I guess that's the width that it's talking about. Yesh lahachsher mitam. So so it seems like that this is good reasoning to be machshar. Shema halcha kirosh, because maybe the halacha follows like the rush. Sorry, kirosh. The it follows like the rush. V'siatzai deloi mitraf ad shvigoyim lechirai siparon. That his support is not that there's not that he does not shabiginos lichtain siparon, that it does not ruin it until it reaches the size he says that it does not ruin it until it reaches the size of a fingernail. V'shema be'etzem nifkam, and perhaps the bone itself was damaged. Because of oid shemaase ba liyadoi, then a case where and he had a case that was brought to him. Amar Sheshima Koil Hasakin Shigima Samafrekes, that he heard the sound of the knife when it touched the bone. It was like a clunk or a chink, whatever it was. Kemoi Shekairin, like a crack. This is called a crack. I guess this is before they had the word crack. Shekairin crack. I guess he's phonetically saying what it sounds like. Shanira v'nichre al yedei zeh shemisham bash hechsher, and it was seen and recognized that the nick came from there, and that it was made from there. In other words, no all chances that's exactly what damaged the knife. Ke hagada kol oile das, and similarly when it was stated that Shenemar be'etzem nifkum kevan sheyesh regilim l'davar al shem. Similar was stated that when it said we said that the bone was damaged, it is because there are signs because it's usual to find the usual signs for this. This usual maybe they check the bone. I don't know what usual signs are that they know that had to check the bone. V'ayim b'sefer. In Rishon that the sefer that he says that he challenges this first ruling, the ha'atzmai psak, and he himself ruled in Chaysha Mishpat Chazak Alai Yermenu. This presumption, if nothing was said. V'al din habai kasav denira dakai afilu shvira v'loy halacha. And regarding the second case, he wrote that it appears that it was just a break, and it's not halacha. And see the begamans v'ayin pegam seif simin shizlisnim biyad and rishon, and see regarding the first ruling v'al din beikasav v'ain lashimai. And regarding the second ruling, he wrote that one is lenient. So he's saying here that we have that if a knife touched the neck bone, and it's not the size of not larger than a fingernail, so then everything's okay because we go like the rush, and so long as it's not didn't make a big pagam. And he wrote, and also he says. In a case where a person shechted and he heard a sound, that's where he goes. The second case is where he heard a sound. So it seems like in these cases, we could be saimich that it was that's where the knife got damaged. Yachol achacham limchayil, but it's possible the achacham may forgive him if the knife was okay. So ayin l'shach. So we see the shach shekasav l'ran kasav like the Rambam shekasav atam l'menidav l'fi sheyismoi chal shkatzoi pa'am acheres v'zniyah paguma. That the reason is that for allowing this is because he may rely on the prior shchita, even if you find that it's damaged now, you still could rely on the prior shchita. So efshar the mechilas chacham. It's possible that the chacham would forgive him. V'ayin b'shuvas bris avram, and see the shuvas bris avram shekasev Not nafkamina bain time of the Rabbanim. The reason of the Rambam hecha sheneva sakin. That maybe the sakin got lost. The im b'tukua kaidem shchita mehani. If they examined it before the shchita, then it's valid. Okay, so it seems like I guess he's saying that a chacham could forgive him so long as previously he was fine, even if it got damaged now. But previously his knives were okay. Then that's fine. And also, if he examined it beforehand, he said examined it beforehand and it was fine, so then we can rely on that. Yesh Leimer. The Mahani B'chlal Ba'am Avad Kedina Shir al Chacham, that one may say it is only acted properly by showing it to a Chacham. Ava B'loi Hara Chacham. If you didn't show it to a Chacham, after Nina, Ein Tzarech Loi Lulei Kvoidai Shchiv Kvoidai. Even according to the minhag these days, that's not necessary except out of covet for the chacham. So b'kol makom habasar treifa. Still, then there's it's still a presumption of treifa, even if it's just a formality. Kevon the avad chazaka the kashrus the avad al tikkun chum. Since the chezkas kashrus is lost because you violated the tikkun rabbanon. So if you have a tikkun rabbanon, you have to show the chacham, even if you know what you're doing. So let's say a guy who's very good at shechting, but he goes to a place that they have a mashgiach there, and he doesn't show it to the mashgiach because there's a tikkun chum there. So therefore, we're knowing these days that that's enough to say that regardless of what he thinks he knows, he doesn't know. And if he didn't show it to a chacham, that enough could be to make it a treif. I guess this is all really to protect the establishment of the bezdin who's making a minhag that a chacham has to check it. Otherwise, we could just go around the minhag of the bezdin and say, well, anyone who knows how to shecht, shecht anyway, and forget the bezdin. You know, it's go to do. You're not supposed to go against the minhag of a bezdin. So if you're in a place where they have a minhag, you got to go to that minhag. In America, there's no like one minhag. Not even in any city, we don't really have a minhag. Maybe in Square they have a minhag, or maybe in Vizhas they have their minhag. Most places don't have a minhag makam. However, if it's with vada kashris, that I think there are established minhag makam, and I know like in Pesach you have to have a certain vada kashris in all the restaurants. If you're not that vada kashris, then you're not kosher, even if some other kashrus organization comes in. So I guess it's a similar idea. I'll show him the Sif Bays, Ice Tezvav, Bahag of Sif Tezvav, some Mavoyer. So it seems like it comes clear. The Af, Shadino Dying Lomanai Sanashim Yiduim. So whereas explained that even nowadays when you appointed trustworthy people, that Nafkamina Haicha Gazri Alav Habezin, but the Bezdin is the one who made an establishment. Loishat Mashkeres Renain Va'avar V'Shachat. So the court decreed he should not do any shechting by privately because we're afraid there's going to be a renan, there's going to be a gossip, and unless they nevertheless he's still shechted. Kevan shegazru alav loy machlu, since they had a gezerah they can't forgive him. V'hu kulayira sakinasai, because he did not show the knife. Medinas, and then Hayu Medinas Isai, and that would be not some not an Isai, and that would be enough to annul him to make him that he's not kosher. That Iraq that Kemai the Medinas Shas that Darak Lemi Shanatal Kabbalah B'Kvoidcham, that the one who received a Kabbalah from the Chachamim, and therefore, if they decreed that he should not check, they do not forgive him. So, in a place where they give Kabbalah, if they don't give a person Kabbalah, then that's like they decreed against him, and he should not check. Yeshuvadas, he has to have Yeshuvadas, he has to concentrate. So that's why we give it to an expert, because he knows how to check, because he concentrates. Zion, Sefer Schloss, look in the say the Shnei Luchas Abris by the Yaakov Horowitz, a big the big Kabbalist Yeke, Shekosov, Shara Chassid Echad, Shaloi Aval Basar Shkuta. There was one Chassid, one pious person. By the way, he came right before Chassidus. Interesting, he's using the word Chassidus because he's really technically the father of Chassidus, even though Baal Shem Tov is usually given the acclaim of being the father of Chassidus. Is really Rabbi Yaakov Horowitz, who wrote Shnei Luchas Abris, which is a Kabbalistic sefer. He wrote it in Germany, and his Talmud was the Baal Shem Tov. But since there was no Chassidus in Germany, the Baal Shem Tov moved and went into Czechoslovakia, in that area, and then in then Poland, and established Chassidus there. So he's considered the father of Chassidus. Just a little bit historical diversion over here. Anyway, he wrote that there was this chassid, this pious person, who saw they did not eat any shechted meat. Misham shara b'chosh mishosh shahasakin peguma v'sheichet loy hergish b'zeh. He saw by sense of touch, by feeling that the knife was nicked, and the shechted did not notice it. I'll shame. I guess. I guess he checked it also, maybe, or maybe it's the Sidanik. I'm not really sure what it means, but I guess he would not trust this sheikhet who checked it and said it was good. He himself did not think the knife was good. Al shame oid va'ayin b'shuvas beis Yaakov and sim l'ger ein tzarach lachmir b'zeh. One needs to be machmir in such a situation. Ella midas achsidus. It's a midas achsidus. Yesh lachmir b'choil. Loy b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov l'havtil mitzvah. Only on Choil, but not Shabbos and Yom Tov, when it would nullify the mitzvah of having basar on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Im ena echol basar al shem. If he did not eat meat for this reason, al shem ve'ein dros the v'roisav machrichim. But the words are not decisive. In other words, that it seems like you could be Chassidus and you could check the knife yourself, even if the guy who has Kabbalah checked the knife and said it was fine, but the guy who has Kabbalah checked the knife and said it was fine, and you check the knife and don't think it is good, you could be it's Chassidus not to eat the meat. But for Shabbos Yom Tov, you still could rely on the meat because of the mitzvah. But the bottom line is that's a mitzvah Chassidus. In other words, if you have a situation where a guy is authorized to Bezdin to check knives, and you think he did not check it well, still you can rely on it because the Bezdin already gave him the power to check, and he already is a person who checks. So therefore, we're saying that he checked, and maybe you felt something that was extra sensory, but a normal person wouldn't find it, and the knife would be fine. Minakal for the community. All right. Shakelim asurim, but then you'd make this guy's kelim asur. Remember, this is talking about the guy who a guy who doesn't check, doesn't he's not soymich in checking his knife. So his kelim are very close to being asur. So ein berhengte ein has tshuva sebers Avram der eis gimel da vinodan sheichet shara sachiran becheskas yafa regarding a sheichet who showed his knife under presumption that it was good. V'chacham hergish by pegima achar, and then a chacham felt pegima after that. L'kach sheichet shushat al basar azraya, and the sheichet then rubbed it on the meat of the arm. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the case, right? The meat of the arm. This is the one where he was able to say that the blood of the guk got onto it. Okay. So the sheikh then goes ahead and rubs it on the meat of his arm, on his skin. And through that, the defect was removed, and he apologized afterwards. So in other words, it was the gunk, right? Because only gunk really could get rubbed off on the arm. A real pagam is not going to get rubbed off. And he apologized and said, "And bevadai loy hayab pagimas gemura," that there was no complete defect, right? Israel yadai shishur fayad, because it was removed by rubbing it on his hands. If it wasn't real pagima, it was just cartilage or a little piece of blood or something that hardened on it. V'kasav she'ena lahaitzi b'chzeches kashras lamidai b'cheskas edo markish, and he wrote also that one should not remove from he should not remove from him the presumption of chesed kashrus and declare that he does no longer how to check the knife. Ki lepamim nikreish rekas me'even v'nidvak be'ezeh makom masakin, because sometimes the sharpening accumulates on the stone, and he sticks to a place, to one place on the knife. V'al yidei zeh, because of this, mugrash ke'ein pegimas ve'al yidei jujush chusar akrishers, and therefore this kind of defect by rubbing it accumulates and is removed. In other words, if a person doesn't sharpen the knife properly, like we're talking about in class, where you have to touch every part of the knife onto the stone. If you're doing only part of the knife onto the stone, then some of that the sediment, the rock sediment, whatever comes, those powder that comes with the knife, could stick onto the rest of the knife, right? And you don't wipe the knife clean after you sharpen it until you shecht, so that could also make a begima, but that could get that easily removed by just rubbing it on your hand. The imkach yachal liyais shemas shemisar asakin, and thus it is possible at the moment the knife was handed over, so becheskas yafa still was good. Adayins we see loy nikrashaya lach, that it was not that it accumulated lachain loy hirgosh, and therefore and it was. And you not feel it. Achar kach nikrash l'chein and morgash, and afterwards, then it did accumulated, and then it was felt. V'zeh husa al yidei shv'shushul al sham, and it was removed simply by rubbing. So we see that that's what really happened to the knife. Like it's explained, you sharpen the knife and it accumulated, and he didn't wipe it off. But then if you do wipe it off, then it comes good again. Mashma nira da'akar lafi Indian, and it fears that he's good still according to all on him. He should not practice anymore. He should always make sure there's a clean knife, and we don't take away his kalim. But he's very close to having kalim removed if he doesn't correct his ways, because if he's gonna shecht with a knife that has gook on it, and just tell us that, oh, by the way, I avoided the gook, then we're afraid he'll also do the same thing by actually begiming the knife, and that we don't allow, because we're afraid that he's not going to avoid the begima, or he's going to have a hesach hadas. He's not going to think when he does it, and the begima is actually going to catch, and he's not going to avoid the begima. So therefore, that's why the Shulchan Aruch said that he's very close to losing his kalim, but ultimately he doesn't lose it because this was not a real pagam, it was just gunk that accumulated, and he'll be more careful in cleaning it. And that is Yud Ches. Have a wonderful day.